Hey, welcome to Shift. I'm Elliot, and I am so glad you're hanging out with me today. This is the spot where we take those clunky, dusty keyboard shortcuts sitting right under your fingertips and turn them into survival gear for the real world. Now, let me ask you a question. Have you ever had one of those days where you just feel off? Like you're overreacting to a tiny comment from a coworker, or you're suddenly snapping at your kids because they dropped a piece of toast, and deep down, you know it's not about the toast. Last Tuesday, I was in the kitchen. My oldest, Clara, she's 5 going on 45, was trying to explain the complex social hierarchy of her kindergarten playground. My youngest, Lucy, who's 3, was simultaneously trying to use a banana as a hammer on the coffee table. It was loud, it was chaotic, and suddenly I felt this massive wave of not just stress, but a weird, defensive kind of anger. I wanted to hide. I wanted to shut the door and disappear. Later that night, after the banana hammer incident was resolved and the girls were asleep, I sat down at my laptop to finish some consulting notes. I had made a typo throughout a 20-page document. I'd written system as system about 100 times. I didn't panic. I just hit Ctrl H, find system, replace with system. Click, fixed. And it hit me. I spent my whole afternoon trying to delete my feelings of overwhelm, but what I really needed was a Control H for my history. I needed to find where that reaction was coming from and replace the old story with a new one. Today, we're talking about Control H, how trauma shapes resilience. We're going deep into the history books, yours and mine. All right, for the non-nerds in the room, though if you're listening to this, you're at least nerd adjacent, let's look at the tech. On a PC, Control H or Command H in some apps opens the Find and Replace tool. It's a two-step process. First, you have to tell the computer exactly what you're looking for. You have to identify the error. Then, you provide the correction. The computer goes through the entire history of that document, finds every instance of that mistake, and swaps it out for something better. It doesn't just delete the text and leave a hole, it fills the space with something more accurate. In life, your history, that's the H, is the document. And let's be real, some of our documents have some pretty messy chapters. When we talk about trauma, people often think of huge cinematic disasters, but trauma is also the small t stuff, the cold parent, the schoolyard bully, the first heartbreak that told you that you weren't enough. These moments create typos in our internal software. We start believing things like, if it's loud, I'm in danger, or if I fail, I'm unlovable. Hitting Control H in your life isn't about erasing your past. You can't delete what happened, but you can find the recurring patterns and replace the meaning you give them. It's about taking those survival skills you learned in the past and updating them for the person you are today. It's moving from I am broken because of what happened to I am resilient because of how I navigated it. Let's break this down into 4 stages of the Control H process. Number 1, the find phase, spotting the ghost in the machine. Before you can change a pattern, you have to see it. In software, if I don't know I'm misspelling system, I'll never fix it. In life, these patterns are often ghosts from our past. I remember when I first started freelance writing. Every time a client gave me even the slightest bit of constructive criticism, my heart would race, my palms would sweat, and I'd convince myself I was about to be fired. It felt like a life or death situation. Why? Because I used Control H to look back. I realized that as a kid, being corrected usually meant a long lecture or a timeout that felt like abandonment. My brain had a find entry that said, criticism equals rejection equals danger. When you feel an outsized emotion, ask yourself, does this feeling belong to right now Or is it a ghost from my history? Most of the time, the intensity of our reaction is a clue that we've stumbled upon an old, unedited chapter of our story. Number 2, the replace phase, changing the narrative. Once you find the pattern, you have to choose the replacement. This is the core of resilience. Resilience isn't just bouncing back to who you were before, it's being transformed by what happened. There's a concept in psychology called post-traumatic growth. It's the idea that people can emerge from struggle with a higher level of functioning than before. Think of it like a bone that breaks. When it heals, the site of the break is often stronger than the rest of the bone. But that only happens if the bone is set correctly. Replacing the narrative sounds like this. Instead of saying, "I'm a people pleaser because I'm weak," you use Ctrl H and say, "I learned to read people's moods to stay safe as a kid. That makes me incredibly empathetic and observant. Now I can use that skill to build deep connections instead of just trying to avoid conflict." You're keeping the skill, but replacing the why. Number 3, the survival to thrival shift. Back to the banana hammer incident with Lucy and Clara. When I sat with that feeling of wanting to hide, I realized that as a kid, my way of dealing with a chaotic household was to become invisible. Hiding was my survival shortcut. It worked back then. It kept me out of trouble. But I'm 30-something now. I'm a dad. I'm the host of Shift. I don't need to hide. Ctrl H allowed me to see that my desire to disappear was just an old line of code. I could replace it with, "I am the calm center of this storm. My kids aren't trying to hurt me, they're just being 3 and 5. Resilience is recognizing that the hacks you used to survive your past, whether it was being the funny one, the quiet one, or the overachiever, were brilliant inventions by a younger version of you. You don't have to hate those parts of yourself. You just have to thank them for their service and offer them an upgrade. Number 4, the power of what happened to me. There's a famous shift in trauma-informed care, moving from asking, "What is wrong with you?" to "What happened to you?" When we look at our history through the lens of Ctrl H, we stop seeing ourselves as faulty hardware. If your computer keeps crashing, you don't beat it with a hammer. Well, you might want to, but it doesn't help. You look at the logs, you see what happened. I have a friend who struggled with extreme anxiety whenever he traveled. He thought he was just not a travel person. We did a little find session. Turns out when he was 8, his family moved suddenly and it was a very unstable, scary time. To his brain, travel was linked to losing my home. By acknowledging that H, that history, he was able to replace the anxiety with a plan. He started bringing a specific candle and his own pillow on trips. He replaced the feeling of displacement with a ritual of bringing home with him. That's resilience in action. It's practical, it's grounded. So, how do we hit Ctrl H this week without getting overwhelmed? Because let's be honest, looking at the past can be heavy. We want small, manageable shifts. Step 1. The Why So Loud audit. The next time you have a reaction that feels too loud for the situation, like getting road rage over a slow turn signal, just pause. Ask, who is reacting right now? Me in 2026 or a younger version of me who's reminded of something else? Just finding it is 50% of the work. Step 2. Rename your survival skills. Take one thing you dislike about yourself. Maybe you're too sensitive or too controlling. Now try to find the H behind it. Did being controlling keep your world organized when things were falling apart? If so, replace the label. You aren't controlling, you are a person who values stability. Feel the difference? Step 3. Update the software. Literally say it out loud. When that old fear or pattern pops up, say, "That was a great tool for then, but I have better tools now." It sounds cheesy, I know, but you're literally signaling to your brain that the replace function is active. Here's your challenge for the week, if you're up for it. We're going to do a micro history find. I want you to pick one recurring typo in your life, a small one. Maybe it's the way you always apologize before asking a question, or the way you feel guilty for taking a lunch break. Find where that typo started. Did a teacher make you feel small for speaking up? Did a first boss make you feel like resting was stealing? Once you find the origin, I want you to replace it just once this week. If you usually apologize before a question, catch yourself. Hit Ctrl H. Replace "I'm sorry, can I ask" with "I have a question." Press the key, see how it feels to run the new code. Thanks for hanging out with me today on Shift. I know talking about history and trauma isn't as light as talking about how to organize your inbox, but man, it is the most important shift we can make. You aren't defined by the chapters you didn't write. You're defined by how you're editing the ones you're in right now. If this episode clicked for you, or if you know someone who's struggling with their own ghosts in the machine, please share it with them. Subscribe, leave a review. It helps more than you know. Next time, we're sticking with Ctrl H, but we're looking outward. We're talking about breaking family cycles. How do we stop the find and replace from just copying our parents' mistakes? It's going to be a big one. Until then, keep it light, keep it real, and remember, sometimes all you need is a little shift. I'm Elliot. See you next time.